Hello and welcome. I'm Caroline Collins, Associate Director of Film Pittsburgh, and welcome to this very special interview with the director of Upheaval, Jonathon Gruber. Jonathon, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Caroline. Nice to
Hi.
meet you.
Or should I say welcome back, actually, because we did screen your short Stew about Ambassador Stuart Eisenstadt at Pittsburgh Shorts just this past November, correct?
That's true. That's true. Stu Eisenstadt needs to be in every film that I make. So,
The heck with that ambassador thing. That's, not nearly as good as being in all your films.
he's amazing. Actually, thank you. We didn't get to talk much about Stu in the last one. I guess I did. I'm trying to think back. Did we do something with Stu? Yeah, we did. It's all hazy because of COVID. So
it is all hazy. Yes, time has no meaning. I don't remember what I did yesterday. So, you could tell me anything and I'd smile and nod because that's the only thing that's getting me through COVID.
Right. It's like every day's a Wednesday. It's like you're at a bar and just not, you're like,
Right.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah, I wish I was at a bar.
I know. Back in 2019.
We didn't know how good we had it. Anyway, I do believe that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and we're going to make the most of these times by having a fun discussion with you. So thanks so much. I'm glad you're here.
And kudos to JFilm for putting this together in such a professional way and pivoting really successfully.
Thank you very much. We are very proud, I have to say, speaking objectively, of course, but we are very proud of our director of programming is amazing. Our programming team is amazing. And I think everyone will really love the films that we programmed, including, of course, Upheaval, which is about a very, how should I say, polarizing figure? I don't know, iconic figure for sure, Menachem Begin. Can you tell me just, obviously, he is world renowned, but how much did you know about the man himself before you got into this, and what really drove you to do this?
Sure. So I was 9 years old, 10 years old, something around that age when the Camp David Accords were happening. So my knowledge of Menachem Begin was really limited to that, to peace with Egypt. I didn't really know much about the Lebanon War. It was kind of hazy. I certainly did not know how important he was to the founding of the State of Israel, sort of his days pre-state. And then so many other things that are, I don't want to give too much away.
Right. Well, everyone has seen it.
Oh, everyone's seen it. Okay, great.
Yes, this is after the screening. So
then
give away the spoilers.
So his role in bringing in Vietnamese boat people, the Ethiopian Jews, Russian Jews, so many remarkable things that he did, and both for good and bad. Deir Yassin, the Lebanon War, even the controversies with expanding the settlements in the West Bank. And so I learned a tremendous amount about him. I was brought onto the project by executive producer Rob Schwartz, who had read a book called The Prime Ministers by Yehuda Avner. I'm sure a lot of people know that. And he was just fascinated with Begin, and he wanted to find a film to find out more. There was nothing out there. And so that led to what now is the first English language feature documentary on Menachem Begin, which is pretty strange when, as you said, you think about his role in the 20th century as a leader.
That was really shocking to me that his life wasn't more closely examined in film before this time. So kudos to you for being the first, really.
Thank you. I mean, there was at the same time that we were making this film, there was a 3-part series in Israel in Hebrew, but it's different. It's more, I say it's a little more inside baseball. I think this is for English speaking audiences. And it's I think a very accessible way to get to know someone who is so important, in Jewish, Israeli, and world history.
Truly. And you are an American, we should say. So you came at this, would you say, from an American point of view?
Well, I'm a New Yorker, so I say I'm born on an island off the coast of America. So, but yes, I don't know, in terms of my sensibilities, it's for an American or an English speaking audience, and obviously that means that we're getting a lot of materials that are in English. Menachem Begin spoke many languages, and so things that would be that might not be in another film in Israel in Hebrew, we gravitate towards. And so we also had resources here in the United States that these other organizations might not have had access to. There's an amazing treasure trove of material in Vanderbilt in Tennessee, the news archives, and so that's where so many of these incredible moments that you see in the film came from, and just his command of English. There's this fantastic scene when there's this talk about it's about Carter and sort of the land in the West Bank, and Begin says it's our land, and of course President Carter, who knows the Bible better than anyone, should know whose land it is. It's just so sarcastic. It's really beautiful, and so that was I and in terms of my storytelling techniques, I mean, we wanted to do all the interviews in English. We got Americans, so it's an interesting question. It's sort of like I don't know how you make an American film. I hope people outside of America like it, but sort of with the sensibilities that I've been raised with.
Well, an American film about someone who is not American. So that's, I mean, I could certainly understand an Israeli filmmaker wanting to dive into exploring his life. But it is interesting that as an American, that was, a story that you wanted to pursue.
Well, I think that, not I think, but I know that so many things that happen in Menachem Begin's life touch on viewers in the United States, whether it's just the concept of anti-Semitism, the World War II, the Holocaust, being in the Gulag, the wars in pre-state Israel, peace in the Middle East, the Lebanon War. So many things that I'm sure your viewers, have a close association with. So
absolutely.
So it didn't feel like there was too much of well, here's this story, here's this man, here's who he was. I mean, we want that, obviously, for people who don't know who Menachem Begin is. But I think the goal would be is that for as wide an audience as possible, people who know his story, who know a little bit of his story, but people who also want to understand how the Middle East is today or why it is where it is today. And that Menachem Begin is a huge part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you talk about the story and the storytelling of it, which is also sort of fascinating to me because he had this outsized life. I mean, he had lived so many lifetimes in his one life. How did you even know how to begin? Did you know you wanted to tell a linear story? Was there a defining moment you felt like you wanted to start with?
The word that I always use for making my films is ruthless.
Oh.
And that I have to really cut it down to what I think is not the bare facts, but the facts that push the story forward, and not to meander too much where it doesn't matter, because then you lose people. And ultimately, this film is supposed to be sort of an icebreaker for people that want to know more, just like it's the opposite of Rob read the book and wanted to see a film. People who see the film and then say, I want to know more.
Interesting.
Read a book. Read The Prime Ministers by Yehuda Avner. You'll find out much more. It was sort of this traditional, here's his life. But what I wanted to make sure was that the seminal experience of his life was the Holocaust and losing his family and running from the Nazis, and that throughout the film, either the words the Holocaust or the feeling of the Holocaust is infused in almost every decision that he made. And I wanted to make sure that we kept kind of returning to that, because that's who that he was defined by. That, as Yossi Klein Halevi said, there is no Menachem Begin without the Holocaust.
Yes. Yeah.
Which was very powerful. Now, at some point while I was making the film, though, we started in, I think, September 2019 is when we did our first interviews. And then we finished up our interviews in January of 2020.
Oh, wow.
But between that, there was Hanukkah of December 2019, in which there were 9 incidents in the New York City area of people being attacked, anti-Semitic attacks. And it really shook me, and it really made me realize that what Menachem Begin was fighting against his whole life was anti-Semitism and Jew hatred, for lack of a better term. And that all of these things that had happened on Hanukkah, it made me realize that that's a really important thing to connect it to today. And unfortunately, I mean, we're talking to your, what happened at the Tree of Life.
Yes.
So that's in our film, and what happened in Toulouse with these young children. And it just, so that I think it's something that came after
Mhm.
sort of when I was set in my ways a little bit about this is how I'm going to make the film, and then it was, I think we need modern anti-Semitic attacks, unfortunately, to
Yeah.
connect it to Menachem Begin.
Yeah.
And as I'm saying, I'm saying this, to a group of people who are connected to Pittsburgh, and it's
Right.
so I want to be very mindful of that.
Yes.
But it's unfortunately something that continues to happen, that has happened, and it was important to make sure that Menachem Begin's attitude towards that, which is it was completely unacceptable,
Yeah.
and that it's something that we have to keep fighting against moving forward, and that hopefully people can take from Menachem Begin his idea that we don't stand for it. We
Mhm.
don't kind of run. We say this is unacceptable, and
Right.
anti-Semitism is just like racism and any other forms of hatred out there. And
Right.
so, kind of a long answer, but
Yeah, no, it's a very full and complete answer. I think really that explains the it explains the film, but it explains what drove him. I mean, he was a committed Zionist, and really because of that, to try and make Israel a safe place. Would you say that for Jews and a welcoming place for Jews?
oh, for sure. One of the most powerful parts of the film for me still is the section about the Ethiopian Jews,
Yes.
and where he brought in, before this was sort of the first Operation Brothers was a secret operation. It wasn't like
Oh.
Operation Moses or Operation Solomon, where everyone knows these 10,000 people came. These
Mhm.
refugees who had walked through Sudan, and they had a secret resort. Some people know there's a film called The Red Sea Resort,
Okay.
and it was just a cover to bring Ethiopian Jews to Israel, and that was
Wow.
under Menachem Begin's watch, and his supporting bringing Russian Jews in, and even bringing the Vietnamese boat people in.
Mhm.
He was a refugee, and
Yes.
he knew
Yeah.
and he knew what it was like, and he wanted to be welcoming, not to Jews, of course, but not just to Jews, to others, and even going back to when he was in the opposition,
Hmm.
his he was against the fact that there was military rule over Arab Israelis in the
Yeah.
towns from 48 until I think the mid 60s is when that finally stopped. So he said they're citizens. They deserve to be treated like other citizens in this country. And I think that Menachem Begin, that what I learned, aside from the controversies, is that in many ways his liberal democratic values have been really overshadowed
Mm-hmm.
by many of the other controversial things, and that's certainly when we see what's going on in Israel today. His role as a very modest leader.
Hmm.
He did not enrich himself through his position.
Yeah.
During the second election, I think been four Israeli elections now.
Yes.
The second election was both parties, both Benny Gantz's party and Bibi's party, were both claiming the mantle of Menachem Begin. The Likud was saying, well, of course, with the Likud, this is
Right.
Begin's party. And the opposition was saying Begin would be ashamed of what you've become. And
Wow.
so it's, his values are a model for people who knew him, and
Mhm.
for people who want to understand really what it takes to be a leader, is to make hard decisions, to take responsibility for those hard decisions, and
Mhm.
not to enrich yourself through your position.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I want to ask about his legacy, but before we get to that, I really also want to ask about another very important influence in his life, and that is his wife.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Sure.
really, you sort of touch on how she was there through all of the important, at least of his political life, all of the important aspects of his political life, and was really behind the scenes. So, can you talk a little bit about that and about what made you want to include that in the film?
Sure. I mean, we talk about he's a fighter, he's all
Yeah.
these different things. He's also a lover. He had a tremendous love for his wife, and supported um, so she supported him. She
Yeah.
supported him, but in a way that wasn't this sort of. She might have been behind the scenes, but it was so clear that he couldn't have done what he had done without her. And we had the scene originally in the film. We had sort of the beginning where they meet, and then when she passes away at the end.
Yeah.
And one of our producers said, I want more, and then it just clicked. It was like, of course, there's this beautiful scene when he's elected prime minister after 30 years in the opposition, what's the first thing he says? I want to thank my wife.
I know.
It's just beautiful. And then we hear his friend Hart Hasten say, well, he was always doing this. And then later on in the film, at a state dinner, he's also thanking his wife. This is so it was really just a beautiful, beautiful relationship that they had, and a model for just and what we didn't find, unfortunately. I wish we could have found some sound bites, or a sound bite, from Eliza, but but no, there was one, but it didn't really work. We're looking and looking, and but it would have been nice to hear from her. But that's something that's super important as well. That here's a man who fought and who was responsible for leading the country, but he also had a softer side, which actually I think helped him to be that kind, caring person for all these people who also we didn't even talk about the Sfardim, the Mizrahim, all the discrimination against those people, from the Jews from North Africa and the Middle East, who he supported and said, this is unacceptable. We can't have two societies in this country. And I'm sure that his relationship with his wife, made him much more sensitive to those things.
Yeah. And sadly, when she passed, it seems almost as if he sort of gave up. I realized that he lived another, I guess, 10 years or so after her passing, but he left public life entirely.
Yeah, that was a hard thing to figure out how to detail.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's like
in his house, right?
He's just not there. Yeah. So in a book by Daniel Gordis, about Begin, who we interviewed, there was just this one little reference to an interview he gave to Channel One in Israel in a year before his death. And so our researchers are amazing researchers that we had both in the U.S. And in Israel, who found all these nuggets, not just Begin talking, but the documents from the Carter Center, from the Peace Treaty, just a little handwritten thing of Ronald Reagan saying, I think Armageddon is near, when during the Osirak bombing. But can you help me? Where was I? What were we talking about?
We were talking about how he left public life after.
Yes, thank you. So
I was so taken in. I just wanted to follow wherever you went.
You can cut that if you want.
No.
Anyway, so then I found. So then I asked our researchers in Israel. I said, "Can you find this interview? Can you find it?" And then they found what we see at the very end when he's in this hospital 8 years later, and he comes out. It's so powerful, and I don't know if anyone has ever seen that, before. But I think we covered all that gap. I think it just gives you a sense of he was broken, after his wife died, and you see it. So, but I think that we've been able to capture through his own words,
absolutely,
the journey. I mean, we have stuff of him going back to the 40s and the 50s, and we even had something. Again, there's so much material. We had something from Meet the Press. We had a radio interview from 1948 that I was just trying to can I use it? Can I use it? We didn't have it. So who knows? That's what websites are for. Maybe we.
There you go. Right. The deleted scenes, the director's cut. You need to do a whole other 4-hour, Justice League sort of cut of this.
Exactly.
That's bad advice. Don't do that.
The origin story. Well, where there's funding, I'm happy to.
There you go. Right. Exactly. Exactly. Well, let's talk a little bit about his legacy. What do you think his legacy is in Israel and in America?
Well, I've touched on it a little bit. I think that for me, it's about leadership, and it's about moral leadership, and it's about taking responsibility for your decisions. For good or for bad. We find that leaders today like to take the credit and don't like to have the blame.
Absolutely.
And that's not leadership.
No, it's an easy way out, but that is not leadership.
No, it's childish. It's what kids do. I didn't eat the cookie, so it wasn't me. And that to me is what struck me, that he was taking responsibility for his decisions. Again, what I had said is that he did not use his position for power, for personal gain after he left the prime minister position. People had to actually put funds together to get him a small apartment in Jerusalem.
Wow.
He didn't even, have a place to live.
Wow.
Basically. And then also being a leader means going, as Dan Meridor, who was in his cabinet, said, taking people where they don't want to go, taking the people. It's not just it's not doing whatever the people want you to do.
Right.
It's leading them. And I think the piece with Egypt was an example of that, is that there, even within the Likud, the right-wing party, there were arguments about whether we should do land for peace. Can you trust Sadat? And Begin, he jumped off the cliff. He said, yes, we have to do this. This is an opportunity.
Yeah.
So that legacy, not just for Israel, but for people in the United States, about leadership, about how to be a leader, about how to take responsibility for what you've done.
Yeah.
And take he resigned. Who resigns these days,
Yeah. Not everyone who should.
We just see today people like the unbelievable things that leaders are doing, and they're just like, nope, not me. Fake news. It's just like, if you did something, take responsibility. So I know I keep repeating that, but
it's a good message. It's a good. I don't want to muddy the waters. We got to end with that, because that's the message everyone should take away.
Okay.
Well, Jonathon, thank you so much for talking with me. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you, Caroline. It's been a pleasure, and thanks to everyone for watching the film, and stay safe out there.
Yes, yourself as well. And thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of the festival, and I'll see you next time.